By 1945, the Third Reich was on the verge of total defeat, although its troops continued to resist Allied attacks. In late March of that year, the U.S. Army entered the city of Aschaffenburg, Germany, and engaged the Wehrmacht in heavy combat. For 10 days men exchanged fire, artillery roared, and much of the town was reduced to rubble. During this clash, something happened that the Americans did not expect. They were forced to fight against M4 Sherman tanks, made in the United States, but driven by German soldiers. The tanks had been captured by the Nazis and painted with swastikas and the colors of the Third Reich. Finally, the Americans won and recovered their battle tanks. Throughout World War II, it was common for troops to abandon their armored vehicles in the middle of the battlefield. The Germans became experts when it came to keeping them as loot and assigning them to the Wehrmacht to serve Hitler's army and massacre the Allies, that is, their manufacturers. Today, in this new episode of Military History, we'll tell you all about the tanks stolen by the Nazis. Are you ready? Let's get started. In German, the word Beutpanzer means captured tank, and it is the name given to the armored vehicles seized from the enemy. These were useful because they increased the numbers of the Wehrmacht, but also allowed German scientists and engineers to get a close look at the technology their enemies were using. Thus, they could learn from it to replicate it or to discover its weaknesses. There were various reasons why Allied troops might abandon their tank in the middle of a battle. Typically, the more combat experience a crew had, the less likely they were to want to flee their vehicle. However, a team of young servicemen, getting to know war for the first time, could be scared more easily, even when the tank had not received significant damage. On occasions, artillery fire could hit the vehicle badly, one of its tracks could break down or the engine could fail. When repair was impossible due to fierce fighting, the crew had to leave it behind. Military regulations state that when a soldier abandons his tank, he must destroy it so that it does not fall into enemy hands. There were different methods with which to do it, and they depended on the time available to complete the task. In extreme situations, it was enough to simply throw grenades into the vehicle and trust that the explosion would take care of everything. On less urgent occasions, the crew had to systematically wreck the tank, piece by piece, disabling the main gun, machine guns, and radio. Frequently the soldiers did not stop to destroy the tank, but instead fled in terror, or died in the middle of battle, leaving the vehicle undamaged and ready to be captured by the Nazis. Hitler's troops first captured tanks in 1938, before World War II broke out. The model in question was the Panzer 38T, a light combat tank, manufactured in Czechoslovakia and appropriated by the Wehrmacht. It weighed 8.2 tons, was 4.5 meters long, 2.3 meters high and 2 meters wide. It was equipped with a 37mm cannon and two 7.92mm machine guns. The forces of the Third Reich used it in the invasion of Poland, and there it proved to be a resistant weapon, since no units were destroyed and they practically never broke down. In fact, it was considered superior to the Panzer I and II, the light main battle tanks produced by Germany in the 1930s. After the rapid conquest of France in 1940, its weapons passed to the Nazi ranks. The model preferred by the Germans was the Char B1, a heavy tank specially designed to penetrate enemy lines. It had a weight of 28 tons, was 6.3 meters long, 2.4 wide, and 2.7 high. Its powerful 40mm armor made it ideal for resisting artillery assaults. Its firepower was equally high, as it had a 75mm howitzer as its primary weapon, and a 47mm cannon and two 7.5mm machine guns as secondary weapons. The Germans renamed the Char the Panzerkampfwagen B2, and refitted it to be a flamethrower tank. It didn't take long for the Nazis to realize the weaknesses of this vehicle. On the one hand, its speed was extremely low, reaching 28 kilometers per hour in the best of cases. On the other, it consumed too much fuel, giving it a range of just 200 kilometers before it needed to be recharged. The Char B1, therefore, was ill-suited for waging a war of movement like the one being fought in Europe. In June 1941, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa and invaded the Soviet Union. In this campaign, the Butpanzer had a prominent role in feeding the German army. Hundreds of French heavy and light armor were assigned to the Eastern Front. However, the weather proved to be an unforgiving rival, and the cold of the Russian territory deteriorated the tanks to the point where it was necessary to find a new function for them, since they were not in a condition to fight. It is estimated that some 200 tanks were removed from the battlefield and put to serve as trailers and tractors. In the Soviet Union, Nazi forces acquired large numbers of T-34s, the medium-type model used by the Russians. This tank was renowned for its balanced firepower, armor, and mobility. It had a weight of 30 tons, a height of 2.4 meters, a length of 6.7 and a width of 3.6. The thickness of the frontal armor was 47 millimeters, while that of the side was 45 millimeters. Its primary weapon was a 76 millimeter F-34 cannon, and secondary armament consisted of two 7.62 millimeter DT machine guns. It was capable of reaching a maximum speed of 55 kilometers per hour, with a range of more than 450 kilometers. German engineers noted that its main weakness was its poor ergonomic layout, as the tank's turret seated no more than 2 people, and the commander's hatch had only a narrow slot through which to guide the action. To rectify these problems, the Germans added an armored cupola where the T-34 commander could stand and see in all directions, with nothing blocking his view. In their clashes with the Americans, the Nazis captured the famous M4 Sherman tanks. This was a medium combat tank, which, although it was considered inferior to the German panzers, was valued for its resistance and reliability when fighting. It weighed 30 tons, was 5.8 meters long, 2.6 wide, and 2.7 high. Its armament was a 75 mm M3 cannon, and 3 Browning machine guns, one 12.7 mm and two 7.6 mm. As we anticipated at the beginning of this video, the Americans were surprised to see their own weapons turned against them. As can be seen, the Germans had to take advantage of all the war material abandoned by the Allies. The reason why they were forced to resort to the spoils of the battlefield is that, at the beginning of the Second War, neither Hitler nor the rest of the Nazi hierarchs were convinced of mobilizing the entire German economy for the war. The leaders of the Third Reich relied on the advantage of their blitzkrieg attacks to conquer Europe, and did not believe that it was necessary for all German factories to be dedicated to producing munitions, weapons, and combat vehicles. This is why the Germans did not have enough tanks to sustain a prolonged war, and this created the need to capture enemy units. Only around 1943, realizing that the fighting on the Eastern Front was far from over, did Hitler decide to apply a war economy policy to the Third Reich. However, by then, it was already too late, and the end of Nazism was near. What do you think is the best tank captured by the Germans? Leave your answer in the comment box below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to learn about many more military events that left their mark on history.